If you're not happy,
I mean, no, I don't mind.
if you're not happy to be on screen, you can just turn your camera off. But I'm just recording so that people who miss it this evening can tune in. So good evening and welcome to Face for Change Fairtrade workshop. So as you know, we are in the middle of Fairtrade Fortnight, and it's an extra special time as the Fairtrade movement in the UK celebrates 30 years of good work. So a very happy birthday to Fairtrade. So you may have noticed on their website and in shops, particularly in the co-op, their slogan is "Be the Change." So, and I really hope that after this evening, listening to three inspirational people, that you too will want to make changes in how you shop, how you invest your money and support people here and across the world. So any questions that you have during the talks, please just pop them in the chat and I'll do my best to put them to the right speakers. Before we start, and just to practice using the chat, would you mind just typing your name, just your first name, the church or organisation that you belong to, and perhaps even the area, because I know we are all across the UK today, which is wonderful. As I just said at the very start, if you haven't already filled in our beneficiary form, I've put it in the chat. It's just a Google Docs, really short, take you 30 seconds. If you wouldn't mind just filling that in. If you haven't got access to that, I can put it on again at the end. But it just help us to understand the demographics of people that we're engaging, to help us, with future workshops and things. So we are really blessed to have three wonderful speakers this evening. So we've got Stefan Donnelly, the Senior Campaigning Manager at Fairtrade Foundation UK. We've got Barbara Echlin, the Vice Chair of Green Christian, and Annette James, who's a trustee at Feeding Liverpool. So thank you so much. I think it's going to be a really interesting, inspiring evening. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Stefan. Stefan Donnelly is the Senior Campaigns Manager at the Fairtrade Foundation, supporting fair trade campaigners in the UK to speak up for fairer trade in their area and nationally. So Stefan, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining tonight and for having me on this excellent panel. Looking forward to the rest of the evening after my bit as well. So I will just share a couple of slides and speak a little bit about Fairtrade generally and particularly Fairtrade Fortnight, which, as you mentioned, Emma, is happening right now. So yeah, I hope you can all see that.
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, I'll start just by telling you a little bit about Fairtrade and what we're up to at the moment. So this Fairtrade Fortnight, as Emma mentioned, Fairtrade Foundation has launched this Be the Change campaign that you might see online and in shops. And this urges everyone in the UK to be the change by backing Fairtrade. Because a stronger Fairtrade movement across the world means more farmers and workers earning enough and with the power to build a future that is fairer for the people and for the planet. So you might ask, how are we asking people to be the change with Fairtrade? I'll go into this in a bit more detail in a moment, but in short, three simple ways. We're asking people to choose Fairtrade, of course, choose Fairtrade products. And that's because when farmers and workers get a fairer deal, they can do more to build that fairer future. And choosing Fairtrade remains the simplest way each and every one of us can do that, because when you choose Fairtrade, you're backing a fairer deal for those farmers and workers behind products like tea, coffee, chocolate, or sort of Fairtrade favourites. And number two there, this Fairtrade Fortnight, we're asking people to urge their local MP to sign the Be the Change pledge. And there's more on that later, but in short, it's a commitment to work in Parliament to deliver fairer trade. Because politicians, we have a role to play in being the change, but politicians have a special role because they can change laws and regulations to help make all trade fair. And that's our ultimate mission. In 50 years' time, we don't really want fair trade to exist. We want all trade to be fair. And number three, we're asking people to be the change by spreading the word, because fair trade works better when more people are involved, in short. If more people are choosing fair trade, that's more income for farmers and workers who can then drive more change in their communities. If more people get involved in fair trade campaigning, that means there's more pressure on politicians to make those changes to make all trade fair. So as I say, we'll go into a bit more detail on that in a moment. But first of all, I want to focus on the difference that fair trade can make. And part of fair trade is always putting the farmer's perspective first. So let me start by introducing you to Dabila Matanou, who is a fair trade cocoa farmer from the Echlin Fairtrade Cooperative in Côte d'Ivoire, also known as Ivory Coast in West Africa. And quote from him there, but yeah, Dabila is a Fairtrade cocoa farmer with the Echlin Cooperative. He's been a cocoa farmer for over 30 years, and he says his greatest pride is his children. And I'll just read out that quote, actually, it's quite powerful. I did not have the chance to continue with my studies, but with Echlin and our plantations, I can pay for my children's studies. And this is my pride because the children are our future. And I think it's easy to understand that pride when you appreciate that himself was not able to complete his education for the simple reason he couldn't afford to do so. Now his children go to schools which were directly built from income from the Fairtrade premium. And the extra income he's been able to earn over the past 30 years with his cooperative means he can do more to ensure that his children have greater opportunities in the future than his generation had. And that's the sort of generational change that you're a part of when you choose Fairtrade. And Dabila's community also used Fairtrade premium funds for important projects like clean water sourcing and infrastructure within his village. So as I said, Dabila has been a cocoa farmer for 30 years, and as Emma mentioned, coincidentally, Fairtrade itself is also celebrating 30 years, a 30-year anniversary this year, and that's 30 years since the first Fairtrade products appeared on shelves in the UK. And from those humble origins 30 years ago, there are now around 5,000 Fairtrade products available to buy in the UK.
I thought it was that long ago.
And when you choose any one of those, as I say, you are
the COP are very good at it, aren't they?
backing a fair deal for farmers and workers disadvantaged by our unfair global trade system.
Sorry, Stefan. Could everybody just mute themselves, please? Because there's just a little bit of feedback, a little bit of interruption there for Stefan, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. Sorry, Stefan.
No worries, thank you. Yeah, and I think we're just going to move. So yeah, well, just have a look at what that means in a little bit of practice, I guess. So here are a few stats. 30 years of Fairtrade in numbers. As I say, the growth of Fairtrade has been pretty extraordinary over 30 years. I mentioned 5,000 products now available. We now work with over 2 million farmers and workers worldwide, and the Fairtrade mark has become the most trusted and most recognised ethical mark in the UK. Over 90% of people recognising it.
What?
No. I think someone has, a few people might have went off mute again. I'm still hearing stuff, but I'll just carry on. Yeah, most importantly, I think this growth has meant that more farmers have more resources to drive the change that they want to see in their communities. And on the next slide, I'll give you an idea of what that looks like by focusing on the Fairtrade premium and the growth we've seen in that. But first of all, I should explain what the Fairtrade premium is. And the Fairtrade premium is an extra cash payment that's received by groups of farmers or workers who grow the tea or the flowers or the coffee plants on top of the price that they receive for their goods or crops. The farmers and workers involved then democratically decide how to invest that money, and that could be in schools, like in the story of Dabila I shared earlier, in healthcare facilities, or in making their businesses more sustainable, addressing the effects of climate change, and whatever they choose, because we believe that the best way to be the change is to make sure that farmers and workers have the power to make those decisions, so they have more power, more income, and more opportunity to drive the change that they want to see in their local community. And over the past 30 years, every time you've picked up a Fairtrade product, you've been a part of that. And so that's an awful lot of statistics, but I just really want to emphasize that behind all those numbers, it's thousands of stories like the one I shared from Dabila earlier. And I won't go into the details of these, but there's quick quotes from a range of farmer stories that we're sharing throughout Fairtrade Fortnight. And so Kawasi there on the left, not only used extra income from Fairtrade to escape debt. She also learned several things, this is a quote, learned several things about women's rights, how to be a good leader, how to manage a group, how to maintain the cohesion of the group, how to diversify crops on her plantations. And that's some of the extra income, some of the extra benefits Fairtrade can offer beyond the extra income through training and support. Then in the middle there, you've got Eliza's story of replanting trees, which is a great example of many Fairtrade farmers' commitment to protecting their local environment and the level of care they have for the lands that they manage. And yeah, that's because so many farmers like Eliza, coffee farmer in Brazil, are seeing the effects of climate change put livelihoods and indeed lives in their local communities at risk right now, across all areas we work, Africa, Latin America, Asia, the Pacific Islands. And the smallholder farmers like Eliza in these areas have done the least to cause climate change, but are feeling its worst effects. And yeah, his quote there is a clear example that of the simple truth that with fairer pay, farmers like him can do even more to protect their environment and take on those effects of climate change. And finally, Bengale Baruma on the right. I think his quote really shows the breadth of benefits that Fairtrade can offer and how it can help secure what we would consider the essentials for communities around the world: access to decent healthcare, having trained teachers in our schools. Cool. So yeah, if you want to be the change and back farmers like the three we've mentioned there and Dabila earlier, here's how you do it. And as I've said, the good news is if, like most people in this country, you choose Fairtrade, you are already part of all of these stories. Choosing Fairtrade has never been easier really than it is now, with over 5,000 products available. And contrary to some perceptions, it doesn't necessarily cost you more. Supermarkets like Co-op, Lidl, Aldi have a lot of their own brand lines, and things like coffee and chocolate. And there's good value like Fairtrade refreshments available in outlets like Greggs these days as well. Fairtrade is ultimately about what the farmer is paid, not what you pay. And yeah, as well as the benefits of Fairtrade Premium described earlier, Fairtrade also offers farmers the security of a Fairtrade minimum price, as mentioned there. And that is a safety net which provides a guarantee that a farmer will never be paid below a particular price, even if the market crashes, which it does quite frequently in area commodities and crops like cocoa, coffee, and basically all the ones that Fairtrade works in. And the final point I'll make about that is that Fairtrade's democratic and transparent structures also offers producers a fairer say, as well as that extra income. Decisions on spending the Fairtrade Premium are made democratically by workers' committees and Fairtrade cooperatives, and the Fairtrade standards also promote gender equality, human rights, protections on climate and environment, and tackle all types of discrimination. And even the simple act of coming together as a cooperative group or a group of workers gives farmers and workers a bigger voice when working for those large multinational companies. So that's just some of the benefits that you're supporting when you choose Fairtrade. And to come back to what we're asking everyone to do this Fairtrade fortnight, which is ask their MP to sign the Be the Change pledge. And I'll put a link in the chat to that after I'm finished here. But as I say, we're asking people to do this because if we can get MPs to change laws and regulations, we can help make all trade fair. The Be the Change pledge, in short, is a commitment as the new Parliament begins really to work with fair trade campaigners locally and organisations like us nationally to change trade for the better. The new government's committed to bringing in a new trade strategy. So this is a really big opportunity in the next couple of years. We've already seen this is only launched at the start of Fairtrade Fortnight, so about a week and a half ago. And we've been really pleased to see over 50 MPs already sign up to do it. And that again has really come from Fairtrade supporters asking them to do so. So over 2,000 Fairtrade supporters have already asked their MP to do this. Dozens of MPs have met supporters at events, but yeah, almost every MP in the UK has now had an email from a Fairtrade supporter and sign this pledge, and it's really helped drive those numbers up and will help us as we push to change trade in the next couple of years. And don't worry if you can't get involved in this in Fairtrade Fortnight, this campaign will actually run until the end of the year as well. And to come back to that third way of supporting Fairtrade, it's, as I say, all about spreading the word, and really that's what Fairtrade Fortnight is all about and has always been all about. It's not just raising awareness, it's raising active, practical support for the fair future that we all want to see. So for farmers like Yale, featured here, Fairtrade is a tool that they can use to build the future that they want to see, to change their community and their business for the better. And if more of us choose Fairtrade, that too is more powerful for farmers like Yale. And as I mentioned, our new intake of politicians really need to hear how much Fairtrade matters to communities all across the country. And farmers like Yale won't have those direct connections to politicians in wealthy countries, but we do. So that's why we need to make sure that their voice is heard, and some of the stories we've shared tonight are heard and understood. So I'll put some details in the chat in how people can get involved. I think we've got some time for some questions. But in short, Fairtrade Fortnight is still going on, and our Be the Change campaign will run to the end of the year. So please do visit the website. Loads of different ways you can get involved. Sign up for our emails, join the local Fairtrade group. And of course, speak to your MP. But yeah, I thank you very much for listening to my presentation. And if we do have time, happy to take a couple of questions now as well. Thank you.
Yeah, if you have any questions for Stefan, thank you for that. Just unmute yourself, and or you can put your hand up and I'll get to people if you'd like to ask anything. Anybody? Yes, Jill?
I just wondered if Fairtrade Fortnight is going to stop in September next year, or is it going to move back to February?
We don't know yet, is the short answer, but as this was the first time we did it in September, we want to do a bit of an evaluation of whether that works, or whether moving it back or a different date would work. But yeah, we'd hope to have a decision on that in the next couple of months. So yeah, if you don't get our emails already, sign up for those, and as soon as we have a decision, we'll be letting everyone know.
Thank you.
We actually like the fact that it's in September because we thought it fitted in really nicely with harvest time. We were chatting today in work saying that actually the fact that it's in September is actually a really nice time of year because we're thinking about harvest and, you know, supporting people. So yeah,
it's interesting.
Anybody else?
I mean, can I just come in on that? Sorry, because I know, Stefan, we've had some correspondence. I know a lot of us in Greater Manchester have felt quite anxious because it's actually been when schools are newly back, and a lot of people are very committed to working with schools, but their old eco groups finished in July and went to senior school. So it's been a real issue for a lot of us, I think. And I also gathered it was something about hoping the supermarkets were going to really make a big thing of it. But I'm not sure that's really taken off, has it? So perhaps you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, it was partly hoping we could get more presence of Fairtrade in big retailers, as obviously they have much more reach than we will ever have. So yeah, I think it's perhaps something we'll evaluate if there was or actually an uptick in that, and also, like you say, we've definitely heard that it doesn't work as well for schools. So yeah, I think we will do a survey as well after this. So you'll be able to put this down. But yeah, I've already got your feedback, Hilary, and I've got that as well, because it is interesting. Like, I think church groups it did work reasonably well for, and the feedback there has generally been positive. But for universities and schools, for example, doesn't work as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a mix in short. But yeah, hope to have an answer for you very soon on 2025.
Has anybody done anything regarding Fairtrade Fortnight in their community groups or churches, perhaps, that you want to quickly share? We've got 2 minutes before we have our next speakers. Anybody want to share what perhaps they've done to encourage Stefan that people are active and doing things? Somebody be brave.
Well, in Bexhill, we have Mr. Fairtrade, who is Jack Doherty, who I hope might be on the call, but he's not. He's got a Fairtrade breakfast coming up this Sunday. He's been going around with his Fairtrade banana, as indeed has my friend Judith Allenson in Settle, another Green Christian member who has been going around with the Fairtrade banana around Settle in North Yorkshire. So things are happening.
Well, we did a nice stand at a church. I think Paul Beardwood, who's on the call now, him and his wife did a lovely stall in our church with different Fairtrade products and information about Fairtrade. And so there were some interesting conversations about Fairtrade, and particularly a packet of biscuits that we use when we have our coffee break. People are like, oh, I didn't know you could get Fairtrade biscuits. So some interesting conversations. So yeah, people are active and are doing things. Anybody else for the last minute? Ask Stefan anything? Yes, Jackie, St John's.
I'm gone. Yeah, we are doing something, but we're incorporating it, like you said before, with Harvest this year. And we're doing all kinds, really. We've got someone coming to talk, I think. My readers organised that, and we're going to have like a walk to church, but we're going to have stalls as well, which I think is great. But we find it better this time of year because of Harvest, really. And we're doing it October-ish, so I think we're doing it the 20th of October, and we have collective worship on the Monday morning, so we're then doing it with the school, with parents as well, so just so they're aware.
Brilliant. Thanks everyone for sharing. And yeah, it's been just from events that people have told us about, community events in churches, schools, just community groups. I believe it's well over 600 now around the country. So yeah, thanks very much everyone who's done anything for Fairtrade Fortnight. It really makes it come alive, and what people do in their communities rather than what we do in our office. So thank you very much.
Annette, did you want to say something before we move on?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that we don't have anything specific Fairtrade, but we have recognised Creation Tide from the 1st of September and had a series of talks and different things around Creation Tide, and particularly looking at the Global South and how they are impacted so much by climate change, and Fairtrade comes into that. Our church is a Fairtrade church, and we always use Fairtrade products. So.
Right, well, thank you everybody. And thank you, Stefan. Thank you so much for that. Well, we'll move on now to our second speaker this evening, who is Barbara Echlin. So Barbara is Vice Chair of Green Christian. She grows some of her own food at home in an organic fruit and veg garden, tending over 50 varieties of apples, pears, plums, a fig tree, and even a medlar planted by her late husband, Edward. I had to Google that, but it looks and sounds like an amazing fruit tree, Barbara. So she's been part of the Green Christian leadership team since 1995 and helped to create their LOAF Principles for food. So over to you, Barbara.
Thank you very much indeed. And it's good to be with you all. Well, I'm, as Emma said, I'm part of Green Christian, and our members come from all backgrounds and church traditions. We're volunteer-led with over 1,200 members, and we've been campaigning on food issues for over 25 years. Back in 1998, we were concerned about how our food was being produced. And I was just jotting down some words on the proverbial back of an envelope, and I came up with LOAF, loaf. L for locally produced, O for organically grown, A for animal friendly, and F for fairly traded. One of my colleagues and friends, George Dent, then came up with the phrase, use your loaf. And indeed, if we want to live on a sustainable planet, we just need to use your loaf. Any unfamiliar with the meaning of loaf? It means you use your head, your common sense. Well, loaf spread. And now it's not uncommon for people to ask us, have you heard of the LOAF Principles? And I say, yeah, actually. But one important point I want to get across to start with is the LOAF Principles, they're not intended to be prescriptive. They're starting points for discussion and thinking on how we source our food. And if you can only follow one principle, that's a great start. Just because you can't do everything doesn't mean you do nothing. Now, in the past year, a quarter of a century on, we thought we'd have a new look at our LOAF food project and to take account of the developments over the past 3 decades since we started campaigning on food. So over the summer, we ran 5 workshops with leading speakers on the 4 strands of our LOAF Principles. We had Vicky Hurd from Sustain on local, Richard Kipling from the Sustainable Food Trust on organic, Joyce De Silva on animal friendly from Compassion World Farming, and Sarah Brazier from the Fairtrade Foundation. And I've incorporated some of their wisdom into the talk this evening. And you can watch the recordings of all 4 of their talks on the Green Christian YouTube channel. I've just put a link in the chat if you want to do that. Now, one huge difference since 1998 is the impact of climate change. Back then, Green Christian was campaigning for action to reduce emissions. Well, now we're still calling for greater urgency in reducing emissions, but in the UK and overseas, farmers are now having to deal with the effects of those in power not listening 3 decades ago. England had its wettest 18 months on record from September 2022 to February 2024. And all of that had a major impact on farming, with high rainfall levels leaving soils waterlogged and affecting crop planting times. So climate change is beginning to bite. Now, before I start showing you a few slides on loaf, I just want to point to links between bread and our Christian faith, because bread, as you will all know, is full of symbolic meaning for Christians. In the Gospels, Jesus described himself as the bread of life. When we prepare the bread and wine at communion, we say, we break this bread to share in the body of Christ. Although we are many, we're one body because we all share in one bread. And then there's Jesus's parable of the loaves and fishes. That teaches us to share what we have so there's enough for all. So I'm going to just press screen share and bring up my PowerPoint, and off we go. Right, well, this is the garden that Emma mentioned. My late husband loved growing food, and I am still continuing with smaller beds. So this goes back to when he was in full food production, and we've got a pear tree, a medlar tree tucked in, another apple tree, a bramley, And in the foreground, you've got rhubarb, potatoes, leeks, chard, all kinds of goodies. For those of you with no garden, roof gardens are becoming fashionable these days. People are managing to grow food in veggie boxes in the smallest of places. And if you like to cooperate with your local council, you might be able to persuade them to plant some fruit and nut trees in the road verges, if you have green verges in your roads. And orchards are great for insects. There are calls these days to share the land with invertebrates. So there we go. That's something we could all do. If you just have a tiny garden, this is Tony Emerson's garden in London, very small front garden, but he grew raspberries, which he shared with his neighbours and people passing by. If you have no garden at all, you might like to see if you could get an allotment plot. The wonderful thing about allotments is if you don't know a great deal about growing food, there are always people there willing to share their wisdom. And of course, the produce can be turned into scrumptious dishes. That pavlova, it's got Denniston superb gauges, blackberries, blueberries, and pink currants. Absolutely scrumptious. And if you can't do any of that, there's always farmers' markets. Food sold at farmers' markets is sourced locally. Number of miles varies. I think London is something like within 100 miles. A lot of small towns, it's within 20, 25 miles. But this is important because 32% of our veg and fruit is imported from overseas, much of it from climate vulnerable countries. According to the latest Soil Association newsletter, nearly half of UK growers believe they'll be out of business within the year. The Soil Association is calling on the government to provide better support for fruit and veg production, including incentives for farmers to switch to nature-friendly methods. They're aiming to double the land used for growing fruit and veg and boost the demand for UK fruit and veg. And who benefits if we do buy local? And remember, local is not just where we grow, but it's also where we buy our food. 8 UK retailers hold 92% of our food. Another thing to remember is the price we pay affects growers. Often, the grower only gets 1% of the price that we pay in the shops. It can be very difficult for farmers to sell their produce direct to the public. It often needs to be processed in some way, for example, milk made into cheese. So some areas are setting up local hubs to enable farmers to sell direct to the public. Okay, O for organic. I've already mentioned the Soil Association. 25 years ago, the Soil Association was the only show in town for understanding the value of nurturing and feeding the soil. Now we have regenerative, agroecology, agroforestry, pasture-fed. How do we know what to choose? Well, the main principles are similar, though sometimes phrased differently. Healthy people, healthy ecosystem, rebuilding soil, restoring biodiversity and other ecosystem services, carbon sequestration. Consumers can buy organic labelled produce with confidence of organic rules, clear boundaries. Organic's binary, something is or is not organic, depending on the certification, which shows the regulations are being kept. There's also clear evidence that organic farming is good for biodiversity. Farmland birds increase, plant species increased. This is a picture of a good friend Tim Jury and his regenerative farm out on the Pevensey levels. And regenerative farming has no tight agreed definition. Regenerative is more flexible than organic. For example, they aim to reduce pesticides and artificial fertilizers, whereas with organic labeling, the consumer can be confident no pesticides or artificial fertilizers have been used. However, regenerative systems provide a pathway towards more sustainable food for farmers that don't want to go the full way and become organic. The problem can be, though, how far along the pathway has the grower I'm buying my food from got? Did they stop at the first step? Not easy to know. This question. Always asked about organic food. Yeah, but it's so expensive. Well, that's the frequent challenge. Yep, it is often more expensive to buy. And yes, many people are deeply worried about making ends meet. And disgracefully, in a rich nation like ours, people are having to choose between eating and heating. But for most people in the UK, because we can't go loaf for everything, doesn't mean we can't occasionally buy one bag or one bunch of organic carrots. And there are many people in the UK who can afford to spend more on their food. And those of us who fall into that category should go with the LOAF principles as the norm. Not only will the food bought be better for our health, but our money is supporting farmers who are farming in a way that is planet friendly. And remember, just because you can't do everything doesn't mean you do nothing. A, for animal friendly. Big question. Should we eat meat and fish? Underlying this question is a fundamental one. Why care for creation? Oh, we care because God loves it and calls on us to care for it, to attend to its flourishing and add to its abundance. And in that, we too flourish and enter into God's joy. Interestingly, the motivation for eating no or less meat is now driven by climate awareness as well as animal welfare. And the stats show the position is changing. Under 25s are eating less meat, and proportionately in the UK, meat eaters 73%, flexitarians 13%, vegetarians 5%, pescatarians 3%, vegan 2%. Many of Green Christian's members will be vegetarian or vegan, but the animal-friendly part of our LOAF principles does not prescribe meat eating. It does, though, ask all of us to consider the welfare of the animals and animal products that we consume. And you can see some suggestions on this slide. Eat less and better meat is a good maxim. In a recent report, Henry Dibbleby recommended that the former government encourage people to reduce meat consumption by 30%. His report was binned. Perhaps the new government will pick it up. I mentioned we had Joyce De Silva come to give us a talk, and we asked her what were her main priorities or what we should do. And this was her manifesto for change. All cages banned for chickens, including so-called enhanced ones. Farrowing crates banned for sows. Decent standards for fish farms, for example, stocking ratios, how you handle them, and fish do feel pain, and less use of pesticides, and pressure MPs on land use. F for fair trade. My former MP was chair of the Parliamentary Fair Trade Committee, and we have an active trade group in the town. I'm delighted to say that Jack Doherty, the main driver behind that, is on this call now, came in late, but he's here. Good to see you, Jack. And Green Christian's LOAF principles have always said very clearly that farmers and producers in the UK and overseas deserve a fair price for their product. Now, when Sarah Brazier came to talk to us on fair trade at Green Christian, she recommended the actions we should take, and she put them into 3 categories: price, power, and pace. Price. She said, persuade a younger demographic to buy Fairtrade, even though the price can be higher. Get your church to become a Fairtrade place of worship. That involves just a commitment. All you have to do is provide Fairtrade tea, coffee and sugar. You could also add in getting some biscuits from Organic Biscuits or Fairtrade biscuits. P for power. Small farmers are not at the table in international discussions where decisions are made that affect them. We need to give them a voice and more power. And 3, pace. Get wealthy nations to address the climate crisis with much more urgency. So how can we put LOAF into practice in our churches? Well, this is a screenshot of the Green Christian website where the LOAF resources all are. The first one is eating together. We encourage church groups organising communal meals to follow the LOAF principles. This could be a simple soup made from homemade vegetables and home-baked bread. Or it could be an elaborate spread where everything is labelled with its origin and provenance. Serve Fairtrade coffee and tea, organic Fairtrade or vegan biscuits. Find a source of Fairtrade communion wine. Help your church council draw up a food policy that follows the LOAF principles. And if you do have a food policy, Green Christian would love to know about it. Church resources. We have services of worship relating to the LOAF principles. We have a LOAF for Lent course. We have LOAF leaflets for you to order to put out in your church. And then food matters. We've got there a list of all the various different wonderful organisations and what they're doing, and giving our thoughts on what they're doing about these vitally important issues of how we source our food. And finally, down at the bottom, resources for harvest. So all you have to do is use your LOAF to live in a sustainable world. Thank you. And any questions after that quick whiz around the LOAF principles?
Well, thank you, Barbara. Does anybody want to ask Barbara anything about LOAF? Oh, Karina? Oh, she's just clapping. Don?
Good evening, Barbara. Long
Good
time
evening, Don.
no see. I go back to the Christian Ecology Link days when I see you this evening. Interesting that on Sunday I was talking about eco-congregation at our church. And obviously the LOAF principles can be brought into that. And then following the service, for those that had got up early, we were all promised a free breakfast. So I went off eventually, picked up my bacon or sausage butty or whatever it was. And it reminded me of a story about a big meal at an event, and all the food was sort of following the principles of LOAF. But they discovered that all the beautiful floral arrangements down the middle of the table had all been flown in from South Africa, which sort of shot themselves in the foot, I suppose. Yeah. And in the same way, did I ask where the bread had come from? Did I ask where the bacon had come from last Sunday morning? And the answer was no. And it shows you that you've got to build it in all the time and think about it. So, yeah, thanks for your presentation.
Don. Thank you, Don.
Thanks, Don. If anybody's got any other questions for Barbara, we may, if you don't mind, either put them in the chat and we'll lead them to the end, because our next speaker has to be somewhere else very promptly at 7:15. So, and I don't want to cut her short. So Barbara, is that okay? If anybody has questions, and we'll ask at the end. But if we move on, please do write your questions in the chat or write them down so you don't forget, and we'll come back to Barbara's LOAF principles after Annette has spoken. So I just want to introduce Annette James to you, who is a long-standing friend and supporter of Face for Change work. So and thank you for supporting us, Annette, and for being here this evening. Annette has a background in public health, In retirement, she continued her passion for social and climate justice. She's an active campaigner and a trustee for Feeding Liverpool and Micah Liverpool. She has a deep faith, is married, a mum to 4 grown-up friends, she's put, and nana to 4 fabulous grandchildren. She believes that we have one precious life, which we are called to live as a valuable part of creation. So Annette, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Emma. Thank you very much for Barbara and Stefan for sort of setting a scene there. That was really, really useful and really helpful. So what I'm going to talk about really is looking at what we can do locally, and particularly looking at the organisation Feeding Liverpool, which came from an ecumenical group which met over a number of years, thinking particularly around poverty and how we could help and support people, particularly to eat well. And initially thinking about food and poverty. Oh, can we have the first slide? Sorry. I can try sharing mine, sorry. I'll try and share mine, Emma, first, and let's see if it works. No. No, mine's not working. Sorry, mine's not working. Can I ask you to share yours? Sorry, everybody. We did try this earlier. I don't know why it doesn't work. If you could put it on full screen, or at least a presentation, that'd be good. So Feeding Liverpool is Liverpool's Food Alliance. It was established in 2015. And I'm here tonight because our director recently left for another life. I'll say that, if anybody knows Naomi. And so I've come as a trustee to talk about this. I've been involved in fair trade since I don't know when, back in the 70s, when I was involved in when Fairtrade organisation was being set up. And I'm really, really pleased to see that this is becoming more and more normal in communities. So go to the next slide, please. We've constantly looked at the Sustainable Development Goals, and the first Sustainable Development Goal, as you know, is ending poverty. The second is about ending hunger, to achieve food security, to improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. And people forget that these development goals are behind a lot of action across the world. And I think it's really important to remind ourselves of those. One of the ways that we do this in Feeding Liverpool is to begin, if we have the next slide, to begin to set out a structure for the city. And this is just the goals that we are working towards. So the first goal is looking at good food at points of crisis. In Liverpool, because it's a distribution point for people who are seeking asylum, we have a lot of people who come who are very much in crisis when they come. And then we have local communities who struggle for all kinds of different reasons, and we're an area of high deprivation. Our second goal is trying to uncover the true scale of food insecurity and looking to see what people are, what people's life stories are and how they're managing. And the third goal is enabling food citizenship, helping people to feel that they have agency themselves. And the LOAF principles, I think the LOAF principles are a little bit like you can be infected with the LOAF principles, because if there's someone who is actively using LOAF principles, they share that with the community and it begins to be an understanding. But as Barbara said, there's a tension, particularly in areas of high deprivation and when people are in food crisis, to think they need to have something to eat. And LOAF principles seem to be a long way down the line, but actually they can underline everything that we do as well. Goal 4 is shifting policy and practice. And that's, again, something that we are very interested in, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And the fifth one is connecting the community. In a way, it's the fifth one and the first one, because it underpins everything that we do, listening to the community, being where people are, sharing learning. And we do that formally through annual reports, but we have community meals and opportunities for people to come together and share their stories. If we have the next slide, please. So Feeding Liverpool, as I said, is Liverpool's Food Alliance, and our pledges are 3 or 4 pledges there, and anyone can sign up to be part of Feeding Liverpool and to share these pledges. One of those, and I'm only going to read out one, is to create a more sustainable food system, thinking about using urban green spaces more effectively, reducing the long supply chain that we have so that we reduce our carbon footprint, and reducing food waste. And that is underpinning a lot of the work that we do. I won't read out all of those others, but those others are really important as we're moving forward as an organisation. And what we're aiming to have is a movement of people working together to make food more accessible, more enjoyable, and more available for everyone. I'll have the next slide, please. What we're doing in Liverpool is that we're the Feeding Liverpool are leading Liverpool's Good Food Plan. And we do this in collaboration with the organisations that are part of Feeding Liverpool. And we have lots of really fantastic organisations that are working with, through and for the whole city and the Good Food Plan. And so we collaborate with all kinds of organisations, including public health. And I think it's quite important that we have the City Council on board in that way. Liverpool has been designated as a fair trade city, but it's sometimes quite hard to see how that's true if you look at the way that meetings are planned, where food comes from. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. If we go on to the next slide, please, which just going to talk a little bit about what the Good Food Plan is. So the Good Food Plan is a plan that will address key issues relating to food. And again, I'm not going to read my slide, you can see it there. But the key thing for me is that we consider the impact that the food we eat is having on our planet, on ourselves, and the practices by which the food that we eat is provided and produced and provided. And the Good Food Plan connects and builds with existing work in the city. And anyone who's working with food in the city, we're interested and wanting to link in and understand how we can work better together. And you'll see there's a whole range of different organisations that work together for change. On the next slide, if we can have that one, please, is just an indication of how food insecurity impacts on people. And we recognise this particularly if people are in food insecurity, it impacts on everything in their life, not least their own health. So over time, if people are in insecure food provision, it's very stressful, so it can lead to anxiety and it can lead to ill health. So cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity and malnutrition. And many people are malnutrified, and some of those people are not very thin, but they could be very obese, and it's just that they don't have the food that they need for their own development and growth. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So this is a part of, so our guiding principles at Feeding Liverpool are that our work is wanting to lead to equity. We recognise the diversity of the city and the different cultures and ethnicities that are involved. And we want people to be included in everything that we do, balancing the immediate relief of hunger whilst addressing the root causes of food insecurity. And some of those things are global, as Barbara has pointed out. But we want to help people to unlock the power that they have and enable them to have their voice heard. And some of that is making data, stories and best practice accessible and available, challenging stigma and shifting the narrative. And some of the work that we do is about collecting stories. And if you have a look on the Feeding Liverpool website, that you'll find there different stories from different people about the situations that they're living in and why they've become food insecure. And then we also have videos about the food spaces that we have across the city and some of the initiatives that we're leading, and I'll share that in a moment. If we go to the next one, please. This is the cycle which we go over and again, connecting and exploring with people, sustaining and strengthening the work that is already happening and helping good practice to emerge and to be supported, and then collaborating with many people, sustaining and scaling what works and building an infrastructure across the city. This is not going to happen overnight, but it's a process that we document so that hopefully we're transparent in leading the way forward. And I know that many people who've been involved with Feeding Liverpool use many of the theories and practice that we have led and that we have highlighted through working alongside other people as well. So if we go on to the next slide, I tried to think about how in this programme and this progress and the development that we have in Feeding Liverpool, how we can link in with the LOAF principles. And I think, thank you, Barbara, for pointing out that actually you don't need to be able to do all 4 of the LOAF principles all at once. And thinking, I tried to put some of our projects, Queen of Greens, which is a mobile grocery van, community food spaces where people come together in pantries, in food banks, and many different ways of sharing food together. And then the Way Ahead project looked at the way that food is delivered and where it comes from, how many carbon miles are we using transporting food, and how can we build up a growers network, looking at joining together allotments, farms, growing spaces across the city region to begin to think about how we can think about farming methods, think about use of pesticides. And fair trade is part of the process as well, thinking how can we ensure that we look at the fair trade system wherever possible, and thinking about alongside that the human rights not only of ourselves in Liverpool, but thinking about particularly the global south and people who work really, really hard and get very little return. So the fair trade principles with the fair trade premium is really important for us to share. If we go on to the next slide, please. This is the Queen of Greens. It's a fruit and veg van, and it delivers right across the city to places where there aren't any local shops selling quality fruit and vegetables. Sometimes in local shops, fruit and veg are on the counters for a long time and they get quite shriveled, and they're not really inspiring for people. So having a food van that will deliver really good quality, affordable fruit and vegetables, and linking that with food vouchers. So we support, of course, the Healthy Start for families with young children, but we also have in Liverpool, and I know this is true in other parts of the country, Alexander Rose vouchers for fruit and vegetables, and we can help people who have no recourse to public funds, and also people who are earning too much to have Healthy Start but still are struggling, and so they can access the Alexander Rose vouchers as well, which can make a massive difference to people. And also we talk about farming methods and where the food comes from, and as far as possible we would source it locally. We go to the next slide, please. So just as I said earlier, we have food places, growing communities across the city, and what we aim is that there's community cohesion where we can have an open dialogue with local people think about reduction of food waste, food justice, think about healthy eating, and places where people can come together and learn cooking skills, thinking about all aspects of food, from preparing, storage, what happens if you know, with leftover food and things like that. So it's a really useful way of engaging with people. So the next slide, please. I'm going to encourage people to go onto the Feeding Liverpool website, because there's so much to say and I feel like I've skimmed the surface. We believe all the time that we need to have a line of sight to the street and back, and that was something that a phrase that was coined by the Bishop of Liverpool when we were setting up the Feeding Liverpool programme. And really these are some of the key things that we're involved in. So there's a network of initiatives around food and growing across the city. Community meals regularly happen across the city with Feeding Liverpool staff actively listening to what people are saying. That it's a way of having access to affordable fresh produce. We listen carefully to people, and so we've set up systems whereby we can address some of the issues that people have. So in the winter, people are finding it harder to get the food that they're eating, fresh fruit and vegetables and eggs for people who had very little agency around food and very little finance to buy food. That we have a healthy boost. Again, I talked about the Healthy Start and helping people who are just over the threshold but still need help and support. And we also talked with older people to think about how we could improve their nutrition. Kinship carers was another group of people who found that they seemed to be missing out on many of the benefits that they could have had, because they're often, if they're fostering children within the family, they don't get any payment. And then we have annual impact reports, and there's a report on our site, No Access to Justice report, which is really, really helpful and has recommendations for the government, for regional governance, local governance, and local people and communities as well. And I hope the next one is a slide, just a map of where food products are in Liverpool. And if you look, this is an active map, and if you look on the Feeding Liverpool website, you can access that. Click on any of those and it'll tell you what's available. And then the final slide is to say thank you very much. If you're interested in Feeding Liverpool, have a look at the website. Think about making a pledge to think what you can do, how you can work with the people of Liverpool and the surrounding areas to make food secure for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annette. That was fascinating, and probably even more so because it's so local to us in Liverpool. I know, Annette, you are supposed to be at another meeting 15 minutes ago.
I'm sorry, and I talked too much. I apologise.
No, don't apologise. It was fascinating, as all the speakers were. If anybody's got any questions to Annette, you can email me or put them in the chat, and I will forward them on. Thanks so much, Annette. I will forward those on to Annette, and yeah, she can respond. If anybody's got any other questions that they wanted to ask Barbara, or anything you wanted to ask me, or even just ask each other, because it may be that, you know, you are based in Liverpool, then you want to perhaps think about networking or getting involved with Feeding Liverpool, or want to know more about how you can, you know, become fair trade in your organisation. If anybody wants to chat or to ask more questions, then feel free to unmute yourselves or put your hand up. If you need to rush off, that's absolutely fine, but I think I'm happy to stay around for a little bit longer, and maybe Stefan and Barbara are as well, if you want to ask them any questions. But feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions. But I will send out after this evening. Thank you, Jill, lovely to see you. All the links of things that have been shared today. I've got a link to Fairtrade, to Feeding Liverpool, and to Green Christian, where you can find all those amazing resources for your communities and churches. So I will send those out in an email. after this evening, and anything else that people feel that they might want to share. I've noticed in the chat people have put some really interesting stuff on, so I will gather that all up and send that out to you. But it's been a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining us, and please feel free to unmute and to discuss or ask questions. But thanks so much.
Thank you, Emma and everyone else. It was, to be honest, not got any questions because there's quite a lot of information to take in and a lot for me to think of. For those who aren't aware, I work at university. I know Emma through that work, and we've had a food action group actually meet today, and the stuff that came in, I think Feeding Liverpool, I'm going to have to look up what they do in more in depth, because actually the discussion about access to food, but also food waste came up, and I think there's a lot to take from there. And it's interesting said about asylum seekers, because obviously in Chester as well, which is where I'm based, that's also a demographic that we do want to support going forward. So there's a lot to take in. So I just want to say thank you. And the LOAF principles as well. It's something that I'll look at, our carbon literacy training, and how people, just because they can't do everything doesn't mean they do nothing. I think it's a really good strapline that I might take, if that's okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amy.
I think for me, I'm running the community pantry at Y Kids, and again, we can't do everything, but if we just have one little change in maybe one of the items that we have in the community pantry, and just making parents aware, and putting leaflets out as well. I think there's a lot in tonight's meeting that we can take away and look at, and like we were saying before, just one change can help can help people along the way. So it's been really good to sit through and listen to the speakers.
Thanks, Anne. And just to question, Anne, do you have any fresh food that do you want to say a little bit about the work that you do and where it is in the country?
Yeah, so I'm based in Bootle in Liverpool, in Sefton Borough, and so I head up the community pantry at Y Kids, which is a children's, youth and families charity. We work with lots and lots of children and families. We've got our main base in Bootle, but we've also got our community bookshop, which is ready to reopen again, which is called Kingsley & Co, which is in the Strand. Plug there, we're always looking for good quality children's second-hand books. Give me a shout if you need any collecting. And I head up the pantry, so we have to limit our pantry to 55 members, because we just haven't got the capacity to have any more. We get our stuff delivered from my local pantry in from St Andrews in Clubmore, and with those deliveries we get fresh fruit and veg each week. Nothing ever goes to waste. If we have stuff left over, it goes to our local nursery, so they can give it out to parents as well. So whatever meat we have, we're allowed to freeze at the end of the week, so parents can get more the following week. So nothing is ever wasted in our pantry.
Amazing. Are you hooked up with any local allotments or local growers?
Not at the minute, but that's sort of like on my radar to think about. I know there's one parent who has just got an allotment, and a friend of mine has just got hers. So it's sort of like I'm putting feelers out to those people just to see, because a lot of the time you have an allotment and you can't get rid of stuff. So that's where my method in my madness is. Well, I'll have your surplus.
Yeah. Well, there is a growers network in Liverpool as well. You know, there's like a map of people who grow food all across Liverpool who are happy to share. So maybe that's a conversation that we could have, Anne.
Okay, yeah, great.
With some organic growers in Liverpool, and
brilliant. Yeah,
some nice stuff. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Anybody else? We're all happy. Oh, it has been a really lovely, very enlightening, very inspiring evening. Like you said, Amy, there's such a lot to take in, isn't it? And to think about. And I think probably my takeaway is going to be, as you said, Barbara, you know, you can't do it all, but you can do one thing. And sometimes there is that pressure, isn't there, when you're shopping for a family, you know, you think, oh, that's slightly cheaper. Do I go organic? Do I go fair trade? But I have made one little switch, and I do buy organic milk. I can't buy all my veg organic because I have 2 hungry boys who eat me out of house and home. I do grow my own veg as well, so that does help a lot. But I have decided to always buy organic milk now. So that's my one little thing. And I do buy fair trade coffee and tea and bananas. But Barbara, that is so encouraging to just be able to make one change, because we can't do it all.
We can't. No,
and
it's so sad if people just reject the whole idea, thinking I can't do all of that.
Yeah.
Couldn't possibly do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that's
thing
and that's one of the main challenges we get, actually, is, you know, this is just not possible for so many people, especially at the moment when we know a lot of people are struggling to pay for good food, and that is very true. But you know, most of us could do at least one thing, and that would help.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, would anybody else like to contribute or say a final word before we finish off? Nope, we're all happy. Wow. Well, thank you all so much for contributing, for giving up your time this evening, especially Stefan and Barbara and Annette. Been really inspiring, and for those of you who have come up on the call as well, because without you it would have been, yeah, just us 4. But thank you so much for all your comments, and yeah, and I will send out an email to you all with all the links and everything else that was discussed. And Anne, perhaps we can we'll drop each other an email about sorting out with some nice organic veg. But thank you all so much. It's been an absolute delight. So good evening, God bless, and see you again soon. Thank you
very much.
Very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. Bye-bye.
Right, thank you.
Right, thank you very much indeed, Emma.
Thanks, Barbara. A pleasure as always.
And slight apologies, I did start admitting people.
Oh, no, please don't apologise.
Shall I take
so
over?
busy. I was so
I felt like I was taking over.
No,
co-host power, you see.
So thank you so much. I was so distracted by
and I muted a
background
couple as well.
Honestly, I'm really grateful you did that. I was very distracted by the background noise, and I was thinking, oh, what's going on? And
do you know how to mute people? Do you know how to mute people?
Yes.
On participants list. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I hadn't realised there was people waiting to come on the call, so I am really grateful. I hope they weren't waiting too long.
No, not too long. No. Okay, no problem. Thank you so much. Lovely to meet all of us. And see Don. Gosh, I don't know how many years since.
Oh, really?
Knew him with my husband Ed, and Phil Lee too. Go back to times when he was first appointed as the chaplain to Bishop James Jones. You know, going back a long way. Yeah.
Oh, well, they're both trustees for Faith for Change.
Are they? Right. Okay. Well, they're both really good guys. It was lovely to see them both. Thank you.
That's lovely. It's a small world, isn't it?
It is. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
God bless. Goodbye.